Hey, everybody. Welcome, welcome, welcome. So glad that you're here tonight. We're going to have yet another late night chat. Thanks, everybody. Here we go.
I say that the century on which we are entering can be and must be the century of the common man.
A radical redistribution of economic power.
I mean, we know that racism is just a byproduct of capitalism. Everything would be all right if everything was put back in the hands of the people.
We need a government that will make sure Americans are taken care of and organize the economy to serve the people, not the profits of a wealthy few.
We now have the techniques and the resources to get rid of poverty.
We got to start getting out there with the people.
Get out of the movement and get to the masses.
We need a government of action.
Welcome, 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 everybody. I am so glad to see you all here tonight. We're going to have yet another late night conversation. So the way this works is I'll give my opening remarks about whatever it is I'm going to talk about. Just kind of some current events. Might not go on too long tonight, but you never know. Sometimes things go on longer than I expect. While I'm speaking, be thinking of what you want me to talk about in the second half of the show. Send me a Rumble rant. You can cash at me at Caleb Maupin22. The best way to send your question is to go to buymeacoffee.com. Somebody cash apped me a question earlier today. That'll be the first one that gets answered. But if you go to buymeacoffee.com, send your question, make the second half of the show interesting. And then we'll do the roll call after my opening remarks, and then I answer your questions for the rest of the show. That's the way it works. In announcements, join the Center for Political Innovation, because the Center for Political Innovation is doing lots of great, amazing work, and our work is becoming more and more important by the day. Join the Center for Political Innovation. We are planning to bring an anti-war message to the No Kings rallies. The Democrats are mobilizing their kind of lame liberal No Kings rallies against Trump, kind of Trump derangement rallies. We're not big fans of Trump, obviously, at this point, because it's the war he started against what his people voted for. But we're going to bring an anti-war message to the No Kings rallies. So join CPI and we'll plug you in to our intervention at the upcoming No Kings rallies. It's going to be very exciting. But yeah, this is just kind of our video, our overview of CPI. Join the Center for Political Innovation. Yes, we, the Center for Political Innovation, are a great, great group of people doing important anti-imperialist work. That's us. So get involved. We're doing great, great work around the country. Become a member today. We got to build an anti-imperialist movement. All right, everybody. So as I said, we'll be following our normal format for the show, which is first the opening remarks. Second, we'll do the roll call, and I'll call you all out as I see you, and then after that, it's all you asking your questions. So go to buymeacoffee.com/Caleb Maupin and send your questions for the second half of the show. Rumble rants, Cash App are also an option. All right, everybody. So today is actually a really special day. This is the last Friday of the Islamic holy month of Ramadan, right? So in the Islamic faith, they have the different pillars. They pray certain times a day. They pay 10% of their income. It's called a zakat. One of the other things that they do is once a year, they fast all day during the month of Ramadan. And it's a holy month, and they eat at night. They have iftar meals at night. but they fast during the day, and it's a way of showing their devotion to God. Is for 1 month they don't eat during the day and they only eat at night, and it's a way of showing their devotion to God. It's part of the Islamic faith, and in 1979. When the Islamic Revolution of Iran happened, Khomeini, who was the leader of the Islamic Revolution, called for the last Friday, because Friday is the day that Muslims have their prayers. Christians, they pray on Sunday. We have Sunday as the church service. Jews, they pray on Saturday. They have Saturday as the Shabbos or the Sabbath. And Muslims, they observe and they go to the mosque on Friday. They have Friday as the day of prayer. And the last Friday of the holy month of Ramadan was the day of Al-Quds. And what is Al-Quds? Jews call the city where Jesus Christ lived, the city where the temple in the Jewish tradition, the capital of the kingdom of Judah. Jews call it Jerusalem. However, Muslims call it Al-Quds. And the last Friday of the month of Ramadan was declared 47 years ago by Imam Khomeini to be the day of Al-Quds, because it would be the day that they would call for liberating Jerusalem, which is also a very holy city in Islam. Right? It's holy in Judaism. It's holy in Christianity. It's holy in Islam. All the Abrahamic faiths have affinity to that city, which Abraham never appeared to have lived there. So that's kind of interesting. But regardless, all the Abrahamic faiths hold the one city of Jerusalem to be a sacred city. And because of that, it's very, very important. And Muslims, Muslims that are following Khomeini, Shia Muslims in particular, but just Muslims that are anti-Israel, a lot of them, they mark the day of Al-Quds, the day to retake Jerusalem, as the last Friday of Ramadan, thanks to Khomeini making that call. And that shows how central the city of Jerusalem is, right? So we know about the Crusades, right, that were waged, where the Pope, he launched, I think, wasn't there 12 of them? The Vatican mobilized people in the Middle Ages to go and try to retake Jerusalem from the Muslims. And there were a number of bloody wars where there were bloody, brutal massacres of Muslims where the Vatican was trying to reconquer Jerusalem. We also know that that the state of Israel claims that Jerusalem is their capital. But generally, other countries that have diplomatic relations won't recognize Jerusalem as their capital. They recognize Tel Aviv as their capital because Jerusalem is a city. There's East Jerusalem, which belongs to the Palestinians, and it is considered an attack on Muslims if Jerusalem is allowed to be a Jewish city and not allowed to be a Muslim city. The Prophet Muhammad was said to have ascended into heaven, in Jerusalem, right? He was apparently in the city of Jerusalem and he was lifted up into heaven. He had a spiritual experience. And there's the Al-Aqsa Mosque, which is in Jerusalem. And also Jerusalem is the city where the temple in ancient Israel was. The temple was destroyed. And that's why, and it gets really complicated because, very traditional Jews, and we're going to be talking about that a lot today. Very traditional Jews maintain that Israel is not really Israel, right? That the Jewish tradition teaches that only the Messiah can create Israel, and that Jerusalem will be the capital of Israel when the Messiah shows up, and that the Messiah will rebuild the temple, right? And the reason that Jesus was in Jerusalem is Jesus was a Jewish teacher who was contending with the rabbis and the Pharisees and the Sanhedrin, and he was in Jerusalem because that's where the temple was, where people that were very interested in religious faith were, and Jesus was contending with the other Jewish leaders. There were a lot of arguments, and actually some of the most intense scenes in the Bible where Jesus is confronting the Sanhedrin and the Pharisees and the scribes are in the temple. He goes to the temple and he's constantly debating them. The temple is a site of debate. There's also the famous, moment where Jesus drove the money changers out of the temple. And the temple, it's a big deal in all throughout, the history of Abrahamic religions. The prophet Jeremiah protested outside the temple. He assembled mobs of poor people who wore sackcloth and gathered outside the temple to protest, right? And so the Jerusalem is like central in the Abrahamic faiths. Christians, Muslims, and Jews all consider it to be very sacred. And Israel is now a Jewish state, and Jerusalem, for the most part, is under the domination of Jews, but there is East Jerusalem that is a Palestinian territory. And there's the Al-Aqsa Mosque, which is the mosque that Muslims pray in Jerusalem. And so Al-Quds, Jerusalem, is at the center of a lot of the contention in the world. And it's the center of the three Abrahamic religions. They all, hold that city in very, very high reverence. And it's fascinating, in Britain, of all places, right? One of the most patriotic songs in Britain is a poem by William or John, who is it? Who wrote the poem Jerusalem? Who wrote the poem of Jerusalem? I can't even remember. It was one of William Blake. William Blake wrote a poem, and they turned it into a patriotic song, Jerusalem. And did those feet in ancient times walk upon England's mountains green? And it calls for building a new Jerusalem in England. Until we have built Jerusalem in England's green and pleasant land, right? So, Jerusalem is just sacred, right? I mean, it is really important in all over the world. People have reverence for the city. So 1979, Khomeini took power in Iran. The Islamic Revolution established the Islamic Republic, and Imam Khomeini, called for Muslims of the world to make the last Friday of Ramadan to be the day of Al-Quds, where Muslims all over the world would rally against Israel to retake the holy city of Al-Quds, Jerusalem. Now, we had a rally in New York City, the Al-Quds Day rally, and I attended it. I was there reporting on it, and I saw a lot. And I will say the number of anti-Israel Jews who were there really impressed me. I knew that Neturei Karta, which is a group of Jews that reject Israel, that are, it's kind of a sliding scale, right, among Orthodox Jews, right? Most Orthodox Jews support Israel politically, but not religiously. They'll tell you that, yes, according to the scripture, according to the Torah, it's not really Israel, but they support it politically because they believe Jews need a homeland for the typical Zionist reasons, but they'll say that's politics, but religiously, it's not Israel. You get some Orthodox Jews that will not say the word Israel because they believe it's a sin. So they call it Eretz Disrael, or land of Israel, meaning that it's like the land of Israel. I had an Orthodox Jew that I used to work with explain to me that Israel's like a landing pad, and that when the Messiah lands, it'll be like a helicopter, but it's not really Israel. It's just the landing pad for Israel. I thought that was interesting, right? You have many Orthodox Jews that will refuse to serve in the Israeli military because it's technically against their teaching to fight for a Jewish state that is not created by the Messiah. But there's one particular branch of Orthodox Judaism, a rather obscure branch of Orthodox Judaism, that most of its members are Russian speaking, which I think is interesting. I don't know exactly why that is, but most of their members have a Russian speaking background. The leader, I believe, is Rabbi Weiss, Mordecai Weiss. And Rabbi Weiss and his followers, not only do they not refer to the country as Israel, not only do they not serve in the Israeli military, they are against Israel. They speak at anti-Israel conferences around the world. They love the Islamic Republic of Iran. They support the Palestinian resistance or whatever. And usually at any pro-Palestine rally in New York City, there'll be 5 or 6 of them, right? And they'll be there, and they have their, the curly hair, the payas, and they'll be there in their observant, Orthodox Jewish garb, and they'll have signs opposing Israel. There'll be 4 or 5 of them. Today, I will say there were at least 40 Hasidic anti-Israel Jews at the rally today for the Day of Al-Quds. I was very impressed. Usually they don't have that many numbers. So I guess they felt that today was really important. And I think that's probably related to Iran being bombed, etc. But the Islamic Shia Muslim community, which in New York City, it's in Queens, New York. You have a very big Shia Muslim community. They have an Islamic center in Queens, New York. It's very big. They have a high school there and such. And so the Shia Muslim community was there in big numbers, and the left, the communist groups were there. Now, I will say this. We'll talk about that later. I do want to comment on a couple other things before I get to that. So I was at the rally. I'm there with my camera guy, and we're interviewing people, and an epic moment happened, and I have the video. I'm going to have a much longer video showing the rally, but I have to show you this epic moment. So I was at the rally, and a Zionist Jew was there at the rally, and he saw the Neturei Karta, the anti-Israel Jews, and he started arguing with them, and they argued back, and we got the whole thing on camera. It was epic, and I am going to show you this anti-Israel Jew. Basically, he's been to Iran. He's been to synagogues in Iran. He knows Jews in Iran. This Zionist Jew tried to tell him that Jews in Iran are persecuted, that Jews and this Orthodox Jew who is anti-Israel just laid the smackdown, said, I've been to Iran and I've seen for myself what it's like for Jews in Iran. Here is the argument. I'm going to show you. This was a pro-Israel Jew arguing with an anti-Israel Jew. Got it all on film. And much longer video of the Al-Quds Day rally in New York City coming up. This was the epic moment we got on film.
The Sabbath, which is paramount to anything. Yes, sir, Rabbi?
It's Zionist propaganda who is responsible for 77 years of bloodshed. Zionist he is responsible for 77 years of bloodshed. The rivers of bloodshed on account of Zionists. We lived in peace prior to the movement of Zionism.
That's not true, because I come from the Middle East, my friend. That's not true.
In 1929.
That's not true. 1929, my grandfather got thrown out of Hebron in 1929.
Rabbi Baruch Kaplan in 1929, he was at the Hebron massacre. He gave a speech that the Zionist was responsible for this bloodshed at Hebron massacre.
Oh, thank you. That's like a husband. That's like when Ike Turner used to beat up Tina Turner and says it's hurting me more than it hurt her.
It's Rabbi Baruch Kaplan, who was the founder of the Beis Yankov schools all around the world. He spoke at a speech that the Zionists are responsible for this
mythology. The Jews lived in harmony with Arabs. When Arabs are under the Jewish rule there.
It's a fact. In Iran, till today, the Jews live there in peace.
You think they're not scared shitless to live in Iran?
Till today,
they don't open their mouths. They can't talk. They live in peace.
I was at the synagogue in Iran.
We
visited the synagogues in Iran, not he. He believed the Zionist propaganda.
You know what? Let him go speak to Iranian Jews.
We visited.
Let him go speak to Iranian Jews.
This is what we did. This is what we did.
A Jew in Iran can't speak freely and say how things
This is what we did.
That's not true.
We went to the synagogues in Iran. They live
Go to the
peace.
synagogues
They practice their religion. They are protected by the government. There is no bloodshed there. There's no bloodshed there.
Yeah, that was absolutely epic. To be there when that happened. I'm actually going to tweet out the video right now. It was absolutely epic. And I'm glad we got that on film, because that guy has actually been to Iran, and that Zionist has not, right? And he started saying, well, my grandfather was there. And then he says, yeah, in that riot that you described, the head rabbi at the time said that riot was caused by the Zionists. I mean, it was, that guy knew his shit, right? And that Zionist was just kind of pandering this line. Oh, you don't possibly believe Jews in Iran are happening. He's like, yeah, I've been to Iran. I've been to synagogues in Iran. It was an epic moment. So I'm actually uploading that video to X right now. Please retweet it, by the way. I'm typing out, watch this anti-Zionist Orthodox Jew who has actually been to Iran completely destroy a Zionist, exposing his lies on the streets of NYC. Watch. And so it's uploading to X right now. Please retweet it. That was an absolutely epic moment. And, there was a lot of good interviews. I interviewed an imam. I interviewed a couple anti-Zionist Jews. I interviewed some leftists, some others. It was really good to be there, right? And shout out to the people there that greeted me. Shout out to Irving. It was good to see our member Irving, who was there. It was good. And I've got a whole long video. I did a lot of interviews with people, and we'll have a whole video afterwards. But yeah, video of anti-Zionist Jew debunking Iran lies. But yeah, if you can retweet this video on X. It was really awesome to be there, and I want the world to see that, right? That this anti-Zionist Jew knew what he was talking about, and the Zionist was just, he didn't expect there'd be someone there who'd actually been to Iran, and so that was very, very, very cool to be there. But there were, there's a lot of other stuff. I was at the rally. So I gotta say, it was, as the crowd got going, it was a couple hundred people, right? When I first got there, the rally was called at 3:30, and it wasn't very big, but the anti-Zionist Jews were there in big numbers at the beginning, and then the Muslim community started coming, and the left started coming, and it started getting bigger. But here's the thing, and I almost don't want to mention this, but it has to be mentioned. And keep in mind, I don't have a dog in this fight, right? I don't care either way. I'm just pointing to a problem, all right? So in New York City, since October 7th, the Palestine rallies have been getting bigger and bigger and bigger, right? And that's good, right? People are speaking up against what Israel's doing, and there's been big demonstrations against the USA bombing Iran. Yeah, please retweet that video, by the way. If you can just click that link and retweet the video. I want people to see that. But anyhow, the rallies have just been getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And who runs them? The People's Forum, which is it's the Party for Socialism and Liberation. It's this nonprofit building that is run by PSL, Brian Becker's group. And so they've been running, and they have very big Palestine rallies. And there's also rallies that are run by Jewish Voices for Peace. But lately, PSL and Jewish Voices for Peace, Democratic Socialists of America, have been cooperating, right? Jewish Voices for Peace is Democratic Socialists of America. People's Forum is Party for Socialism and Liberation. All right. So today, it's the day of Al-Quds. It's the Shia Muslim community that stands with Iran. They're having their rally. Why was the rally only a few hundred people? Why? Why was it? And I will tell you why, right? And I have to tell you this. I have to tell you this because you have to know this. We just have to be real. There's a big, big, big problem in anti-imperialism, okay? So why is it that, there was a rally on Saturday, a week from tomorrow, or a week before yesterday, 6 days ago, there was a rally of, tens of thousands of people in the streets opposing the war with Iran. Why is it that there's been Palestine rallies in this city that have 10, 20,000 people? But today, on a very, very important day of solidarity with Iran, of solidarity with the Palestinians, at a time when Iran is being bombed, why is it that the rally was only a couple hundred people? I'll tell you why. Because the big rallies are run by the Party for Socialism and Liberation and Democratic Socialists of America. And this rally was organized by the Shia Muslim community, and they have a relationship with the Workers' World Party. Party for Socialism and Liberation and Workers' World Party split in 2004. Brian Becker was the leader of the Workers' World Party, and he walked away, and he formed the Party for Socialism and Liberation. So basically, the PSL folks didn't mobilize people to come out, and all the forces that generally come to the PSL rallies were not informed and not invited to the rally because it was run by Brian's rivals, the Workers' World Party, right? They were running the rally. It was Sarah Flounders and the United National Anti-War Committee. And you look at that and it's like, isn't that stupid? And I'm not saying whose fault that is. I'm saying that's really, really stupid. Okay. And it's like, this is why anti-imperialism in America is weak, right? Brian Becker is over 70. Sarah Flounders is over 70. They used to be in the same Communist Party until in 2004, they split from each other. And they hate each other, even though they believe basically the same thing. And they have basically the same strategy, which is whatever the liberals are doing, right? We echo it and we try to set up a stage and organize protests around the latest trendy liberal cause. They have the exact same strategy, which is tailing liberals. They have the exact same ideology. They're both Marcyites. They followed Sam Marcy, who was a renegade Trotskyist who went in kind of a more pro-Stalin, pro-Soviet direction. They have basically the same ideology. They believe the same stuff, but they're in rival groups. And so, and it's Sarah Flounders of the Workers' World Party who has an in with the Shia Muslim community in New York City. She's been to Iran. another time, at one point, and she has a relationship with the Shia Muslim community that Brian Becker doesn't have, right? Brian Becker, I don't know if he's ever visited Iran. He probably has, but for whatever reason, the Shia Muslim community likes Sarah Flounders and the Workers' World Party, and they arrange the rallies that they organize. And the big rallies are organized by the People's Forum and Party for Socialism and Liberation and Democratic Socialists of America. So because of the fact that this rally was not organized by big shot Brian Becker, but was instead organized by big shot Sarah Flounders, the rally today that should have been much bigger was smaller. And that is why anti-imperialism in America is a complete joke, right? It'd be one thing. I mean, it would make some sense. Imagine that Brian Becker was like a Stalin supporter and Sarah was a Trotskyist. That might make sense. It might make sense if there was like a real point of disagreement. Like if one of those groups was for Trump and the other was for Biden or for the Democrats. That's not the case. They both have Trump derangement syndrome. They're both hysterical Democrats, basically, who think Trump is Hitler. It's just a fucking battle of egos, right? The whole pro-Palestine community should have been in the streets today. It should have been. But egos. And because Sarah has a relationship with the Shia Muslim community, and Brian doesn't, it was Sarah's group, the Workers' World United National Anti-War Committee, that organized the rally. And so Brian's people boycotted and didn't show up. That is stupid. Am I the only person watching this who is so tired of this kind of bullshit? I'm so tired of this kind of bullshit. I really am. This is why I'm not a communist anymore, is because of this, right? These people are all in it for themselves. It's all a giant ego contest. And it's all about who gets to be the big shot, right? And the idea is Brian Becker loves to not let people speak. It's like this thing. I control the stage at the rally. I let people speak. And Sarah Flounders is the exact same way. You can't speak at my rally unless you kiss my ring, unless you suck up to me. So Brian and his people are not going to come to the rally today because in order to get on the stage, in order to get the attention, they would have to kiss Sarah's ring, and they hate Sarah. And of course, Sarah and all of them, they're not going to build and be part of the rallies that PSL does, because in order to do that, in order to get on the stage, they would have to kiss Brian's ring. And it is so sickening. And I hope that there are people around the world watching this, because this is why anti-imperialism in America is a mess. Take everything else that I come on here night after night after night complaining about out of the picture, right? I have my critique. I don't agree with either of those groups. And they're the same. They're the same groups. They have the exact same strategy, which is pander to the liberals. But they have to, it's all about ego, right? And of course, they both hate me because I'm not in either of the group, right? They both hate my guts because I'm not in either group, and I don't agree with their strategy. They have a failing strategy, pandering to the liberals and tailing after liberals when conservatives are more anti-establishment, than liberals. It's not the right strategy. But even in their agreeing on the strategy, even in having the exact same obscure interpretation of communism, they still can't have joint rallies because of ego. Right? And it's bullshit. It's bullshit. And I'm tired of these people. I'm really, really tired of these people. And I hate going to these rallies because they all know me by face. And, I'm ducking, and, I don't want to, every so often I'll get a bunch of people following me around. You're a Nazi. You're a white supremacist. These people, it's a disaster. The reason we don't have a real anti-war movement in America is because it is run by clowns. It is run by clowns, right? They can't even have a day of Al-Quds rally on the same day. They can't even, it's just, and do you think the Muslim community cares about, is it Workers' World Party? Is it PSL? Do you think they care? Do you think the people dying in Iran right now, do you think they care? They're not Marxists. They have no horse in this fight. Do you think the people in Gaza care? Do you think the people in the U.S. military who really need this war to stop, do you think they care about this? The egos that define the anti-war politics in America are absolutely sickening and out of control. And, it is so unbelievable, right? And so, that's why today's rally, that should have been just as big as all the other pro-Palestine rallies, just as big as all the other anti-war rallies, it had to be smaller because Workers' World got to be the bosses, not PSL. That is just so stupid. It is so stupid. And I'm sure there may be people watching this stream who are with one or the other group, and they're sitting there going, well, it's the other group, it's their fault. Yeah. I'm sure both groups point the finger at the other, and this is the biggest game they all love to play. They both want unity. All communists, all leftists want unity, until that unity means treating somebody else with respect, right? Unity means we get to be the boss and treat you like garbage, and you just have to take it because we're in charge, or else you just don't want unity, right? And that's what PSL does. That's what Workers' World does. The Communist Party does. It is childish. It is childish. And today's rally, at a time when Iran needs solidarity more than ever, today's rally should have been tens of thousands of people. But because the group that is better at getting tens of thousands of people at their things doesn't get along with the group that ran this rally, it was smaller. Dumb. It's not enough that both of these groups hate the bulk of the American people, right? That's not enough, right? Look, at this point in America, this is how Americans divide. And I've said this over and over again, and I'll repeat this on these streams. When it comes to this war, and it comes to American politics in general, there are 50% of Americans that are just anti-Trumpers. And they're anti-Trumpers because they can't think. They follow CNN. Trump is a big fat racist. He's another Hitler. I saw it on Rachel Maddow. I love my boss. Right? They wouldn't be against this war if Kamala Harris was doing it. And that's why they didn't protest the bombing of Libya and the murder of Gaddafi. There's about 50% of Americans that just hate Trump because that's the party line. That's what their boss tells them. That's what their university professor tells them. That's what CNN tells them. And they're just, Trump is bad because he is bad. That's 50% of Americans. Yeah, they're against the war right now because Trump is doing it. And I appreciate that. And we're going to engage with those folks on the 28th. We're going to be at No Kings and we're going to engage with those folks. So, I'm not saying those folks are completely irredeemable, but don't pretend there's anything anti-imperialist or anything dissident about them. They're just against Trump because the American establishment doesn't like Trump. Now, there's another 25% of Americans that blindly support Donald Trump. Donald Trump can do no wrong as far as they're concerned, and it's because they are angry. They're resentful. They're hateful. And they're angry at the American political establishment. They're angry at the standard of living dropping. They're angry at the political correctness and how there's constantly people pointing at them, calling them racist and calling them sexist. They're angry about how, if you admit that you're a Christian in this country, it's almost like you're committing a crime in a lot of circles. People look at you like you're a bad person if you express Christian faith, but not Jewish faith, not Muslim faith, but Christian faith is like a crime. It's a big faux pas if you have a Bible, if you wear a cross, They have anger at the establishment, but beyond that, they're not thinking, right? They're mad at the establishment and they see Trump as their big, mean daddy who's fighting the establishment, which he is not doing. And they support Trump blindly, right? And when they perceive Trump as hurting people, that makes them feel like they're getting revenge on the establishment. Again, all these people that just dismiss Trumpers as racist, there's some interesting psychology going on there, right? They're angry at the establishment, which is good, but they're not thinking. They're just angry at the establishment. And then when Trump does awful things like send ICE to terrorize communities or bomb Iran, which actually serve the establishment, they see that as Trump hurting the establishment, as Trump punching back. He's fighting for us. That's how they see it. And so they support Trump's repression. It's an interesting game, right? And that's about 25% of the U.S. public. Those are the people that think everyone in Iran is celebrating that the country is being bombed right now. Those are the people that think that all of Venezuela was celebrating when Maduro got kidnapped. Those are the people that, they cheer for Kyle Rittenhouse because he killed leftists and they all deserve to die. And, there's a layer of people that their bitterness at the establishment translates to blindly supporting Donald Trump. But there's another 25%. And this is the most important constituency in America. These are the only people in America that are thinking right now, is this other 25% that I call the dissident MAGA. These are people who question the vaccine. You weren't allowed to question the vaccine if you're on the left. If you question the vaccine, oh my God, you're racist. Questioning the vaccine is Nazi. But there's a bunch of people that question the vaccine. There are people that are sincerely anti-war, like Tucker Carlson, like Marjorie Taylor Greene. There are people that are sincerely anti-Israel. And while they might be conservative, they know that the Israel lobby runs America. They know what the Epstein stuff was about. and they are not okay with it. And the only people in America that are thinking right now are dissident MAGA. All right. And you might say, well, Caleb, I know this socialist or leftist. Did they question the vaccine? If they're in one, if you're in any of these communist groups, you're not allowed to question the vaccine. If you're in any of these communist groups, you have to hate Russia, right? You have to hysterically hate Russia and denounce and disavow Russia with all your heart and soul. If you're in any of these communist groups, you have to you have to condemn anyone who isn't immediately 100% on board with every trans issue. You're really not allowed to really be anti-establishment if you're in any of the communist groups. The communist groups have all just kind of dissolved into that 50% of America, or maybe 51% of America, that is defending the establishment, right? And so the only people that are thinking are the people that you can call dissident MAGA. Now, not all of them ever identified with MAGA, right? Jimmy Dore was never MAGA, right? Jimmy Dore is out of the left, but Jimmy Dore questioned the vaccine. Jimmy Dore is not on board with you must support everything trans or else you're a bad person. Jimmy Dore is thinking, right? There's people in CPI that, they come out of leftism. Dan, our member out in LA, a great guy who does great work out in LA. Dan was in Occupy. He comes out of the left. He's worked against landmines and stuff. And Dan, right, also questioned the vaccine, but he's with Pacifica Radio. He does local access TV. He's out of the left, but he is, I put him in the same category as dissident MAGA. He was never a MAGA, but I put him in the same category because he, when the left went crazy, he didn't go along with it. And so there's a layer of people that are in this category. Not all of them were ever MAGA. Most of them were MAGA, but they're dissident MAGA in that they're mad at the they're not blind followers of Trump. They can see that Donald Trump broke his promises. And because of that, they're speaking up. And Tucker Carlson is under attack right now because they're calling him the most dangerous anti-Semite in America. Ted Cruz is rallying people against him like you wouldn't believe, right? Marjorie Taylor Greene, Thomas Massey, a member of the Congress who has stood up against the Israel lobby, has opposed all these wars. Thomas Massey, Candace Owens is also under attack, and they put all kinds of pressure on Megyn Kelly to denounce her. The people that are thinking are in this space that CPI is in, with Jimmy Dore, with Tucker Carlson, with Marjorie Taylor Greene, with Thomas Massey, with Kim Iverson. Kim Iverson is a great hero, in my opinion. She does great work. That's where people are thinking, and that's who we need to engage with. The left is dead, and even it's not just that they don't have the courage to question vaccines. They don't have the courage to stand against Russophobia. They don't have the courage to not jump on the trans bandwagon and cancel everyone. It's not just that. It's just stuff like this. PSL and Workers' World both support vaccines. PSL and Workers' World both have transgender derangement syndrome. PSL and Workers' World both, think anyone like me who supports Russia is a Nazi and a white supremacist. And, they're the same group, basically. But they still can't have a rally together because ego. And that's why the left is dead, okay? And if you're a sincere anti-imperialist, you have to go lower and deeper to the real masses. And we have to use war to expose the social imperialists. Go and read Imperialism and the Split in Socialism by Vladimir Lenin. What does he say? Does he say, go to the Social Democrats and beg for a seat at the table? No. He says, go lower and deeper to the real masses. The real masses who are angry at the government, who are angry at the system, and make it so they don't just have blind hatred like the people that are still blindly supporting Trump as he bombs Iran, but instead educate them and get them to think. That's what we're trying to do. People say we're trying to brainwash people. No, we're trying to unbrainwash people, trying to wake people up. We're trying to get people to think. We're challenging people to think. People are not thinking, and we need to go where people are already starting to think and help them think further and awaken the innovation, the creative side of their mind, get them awakened. We are trying to awaken the creative side of people. That's what innovationism and the Center for Political Innovation, that's what it's all about. We celebrate the creative spirit of humanity, right? The fact that human beings are the only species in the world that is constantly reinventing its relationship with nature. Bees have been making their beehives the same way for thousands of years. Ants have been making their ant colonies and ant farms the same way for thousands of years. But just 7, 8, 9,000 years, human beings have gone from hunter-gatherers in the woods to space travel, iPhones, artificial intelligence. No other species is capable of doing what human beings are capable of doing, right? We are an amazing, amazing, amazing species. We really, really are. And that creative power of human beings to constantly want to expand and build up and expand their life expectancy, expand their population, reinvent their relationship with nature to reach a higher level of energy flux density. This is what defines human beings. And it's propelled us from slavery to feudalism to capitalism in its monopolistic stage of imperialism. And now around the world, we have a new social order that is emerging as countries have broken out of globalism and imperialism with planned economies and are building themselves up. Well, that's what we're about. And our job is to go lower and deeper to the real masses, to mobilize against the social imperialists. And that's what we're all about. And you go and read my books and go and, read all about, go to the CPI website. You got What is Innovationism, our like little handbook there that tells you all about it. We've got it in Spanish now too, by the way. You can check us all out. We're doing great work. So yeah, I mean, I'm going to have a whole video of what I saw at the Day of Al-Quds rally in New York City. I did some great interviews with people on the streets of New York. It was really, really great. So you're going to see that. That'll be out. But that epic argument between the Muslim or between the pro-Israel Jew and the anti-Israel Jew, that was absolutely epic. I see people are tweeting it out. Please continue tweeting it out. It was really an epic argument, and I really I really want people to see that, so yeah, let me just put that out there. Now I got a couple other things I want to talk about in my opening remarks today. Two other things mainly. First one is that Ann Coulter, you remember Ann Coulter? Ann Coulter was a conservative commentator, and she was kind of a low-level Republican strategist, lawyer during the impeachment of Bill Clinton. She hated Bill Clinton. She wrote her first book during the Clinton impeachment scandal. It was called High Crimes and Misdemeanors, the Case Against William Jefferson Clinton. And then during the Bush years, she became she's blonde-haired and she's good-looking, and she was like the sexy mean girl Bush conservative. And she has kind of fallen in popularity over the last few years because, the conservative movement has changed, right? And Trump very much likes to lampoon and oppose the establishment. He doesn't mean it, right? I mean, he clearly doesn't mean it if he's bombing Iran right now. I mean, but Ann Coulter is opposing Trump, and she's actually, it seems, opposing this war, which is interesting. And so I saw this clip of Ann Coulter, opposing this war, and I'm gonna put it on, and I'm gonna tell you about Ann Coulter, because I for years I had different theories about Ann Coulter, and then it all made sense. But anyway, this is the new clip of Ann Coulter opposing this war, which I'll take it. Anyone who's opposing this war, 100%. Here we go.
Mad at Trump right now.
I think this war is a disaster, utterly pointless. The three pillars of the Trump campaign, both in 2016 and 2020, that set him apart from every other Republican and every other Democrat. I mean, for the first time, this is the basket of issues I wanted to vote on. Number one, the wall, deport illegals, the whole immigration program. Number two, bring back manufacturing, the tariff stuff. I'm all in favor of that. Our working class in America has been absolutely wiped out. I don't think we need a lot of schlock from China. Why are we building them up? I mean, I think a lot of it has to do with labor unions, but solve the problem of labor unions. Don't just outsource everything we make, either by bringing them here to work cheap, or by having it done over there. And the third pillar was no more pointless wars. And I mean, I think I'm in a good position to say this. There was no one more enthusiastic about both the Afghanistan and Iraq war when they began. It was, of course, right after 9/11, and the country didn't just have another 2 million illegals dumped on it. We weren't going through all of this transgender madness. We weren't quite as in hoc to China. So the country itself wasn't in nearly as much trouble. Oh my gosh, the crime right now. Think of the crime. The Democratic policy is just release criminals, release criminals. Those are issues that have an effect on Americans. That's making America first, cleaning up that stuff. Waging pointless wars around the world and being the world.
I gotta say, I totally disagree with like everything she just said about labor unions and China and all of that. I'm just putting on here that Ann Coulter is opposing this war. It's kind of interesting that she's able to come to this conclusion. Everything she said about China and labor unions and all of that was way off, but let her continue.
Policemen. How many times do we have to vote on this? And I mean, Trump was attacked for the things he said in 2016. Remember, he said, you know, Jeb's father lied us into war, and the Wall Street Journal and New York Post assured us that that was going to kill him in South Carolina, biggest military state in the country, and that was in the South Carolina primary. And next day, primaries hold. Who wins? Huge majority. Donald Trump. We have voted on this over and over and over again. So now what? We've already had how many? 7 Americans die, not to mention 166 school children in our name for a war that does not make one American safer.
What she said about the war, and again, she didn't buy the argument that Iran bombed their own school, right? She didn't accept that lie from Trump, and she said, you know, we've had Americans die for a war that doesn't make one American safer. Good for her for saying that. Now, I'm glad she admitted she was a huge supporter of the U.S. invasion of Iraq and a huge supporter of the U.S. invasion of Afghanistan. She was awful during the Bush years, but it looks like she, to some degree or other, even though everything she said about immigration and China and labor unions was off, she gets this, and good for her. Now, I'm just going to give you the background on Ann Coulter because I think it's interesting, right? So you all know that I love psychoanalysis. I'm fascinated by Sigmund Freud and psychoanalysis. If you really want to understand psychoanalysis and how it relates to Marxism, I recommend that you read Ruben Osborne, his very, very good book, Freud and Marx, A Dialectical Study, which is, it's basically just an introduction. If you want an introduction to Marxism and an introduction to psychoanalysis, you will learn the basics in that book. It's actually very, very brilliant. But anyhow, so for years, I was fascinated by Ann Coulter, and I actually read a number of her books. And when I was in college, right, I used to listen to audiobooks while I was cleaning my apartment. And, I had a little apartment near the campus, and I used to clean the apartment while I put on audiobooks. And I listened to her book, Treason. I listened to her book, I don't remember. I listened to a number of her books. And I noticed, she knew way too much about communism, right? She knew way, way too much about communism. One of her books mentions the October League, which is an obscure Marxist-Leninist communist group from the 1970s, one of the pro-China groups. And she would mention Mumia Abu-Jamal pretty frequently in her writing. She knew way, way too much about communism. And I always thought that was weird. And I used to joke among my friends that she was like a secret communist trying to make the right wing look so bad it would like help the left or something like that. But it all made sense. Does anyone remember a movie that came out a few years back starring Tom Hanks called A Bridge of Spies? 2015, a movie came out called Bridge of Spies. Anyone remember that? Well, Tom Hanks made this movie Bridge of Spies, and then I caught the article. There was actually an article, Bridge of Spies and how it relates to Ann Coulter. Boom. And I read the article. Ann Coulter's father is a character in that movie. So the movie Bridge of Spies is about a Soviet spy in America who was arrested during the 1970s by the FBI. And one of the FBI agents who caught him was a guy named John, aka Jack Coulter, who was a very prominent FBI agent during the 1970s. That was Ann Coulter's father. Let that sink in. That was Ann Coulter's father. And if you look at Jack Coulter, Ann Coulter's father, suddenly Ann Coulter makes perfect sense from a psychoanalytic perspective, right? So Ann Coulter's dad, Jack Coulter, was not only was he involved in arresting this Soviet spy in the 1960s. That's why he's portrayed in the movie with Tom Hanks. On top of that, Ann Coulter's father was in the division of the FBI that tracked communist groups. So that's why she knew about the October League. That's why she knew all this obscure communist history. Her father sent FBI agents to Arizona, or was it Arizona or New Mexico, to infiltrate a labor union, right? For a long time, the Communist Party of the United States, it's technically, I think maybe even today, it's technically illegal for any member of the Communist Party to hold elected office in a labor union, right? But there were only 3 labor unions that didn't comply with that, right? And the first one was the International Longshore Warehouse Union, the ILWU. And they're in San Francisco. It's the dock workers union. And they're quite radical. For a long time, their leader was a guy named Clarence Thomas, just the same name, but nothing to do with the Supreme Court justice, who was like, he did the Million Worker March, and he was like a leftist. The other one was the United Electrical Workers, or the UE, right? And they also didn't cooperate with it. And there was one other union, and it was called the International Union of Mine, Mill, and Smelter Workers, right? They called it Mine Mill, and I believe it's based in New Mexico or something like that. And I don't think it exists anymore. But for many, many years, it was like the only, it and UE and International Longshore Warehouse Union, ILWU, were the only unions that allowed Communist Party members to work for them after McCarthyism, because that was technically illegal. They did, under the McCarran Act, it became illegal for any communist to hold office in a labor union. And I think that's still on the books. I don't think it's enforced, and it's probably a civil rights violation. It probably wouldn't stand up in court. But apparently Ann Coulter's dad, Jack Coulter of the FBI, he sent FBI informants to join the mine mill union. And he ran the FBI. The FBI stalked this labor union in New Mexico, and it was Ann Coulter's dad who ran the operation. You can't make this up, right? So if we look at this from a psychoanalytic perspective, Ann Coulter, who is she? She's a very good-looking woman, and she has grown up, and many people have criticized her work, especially at the height of her career. Her work didn't champion conservative causes. Her books didn't defend conservative principles. Her books just tore down leftists, right? Her book Treason is all about how the Democrats are all communist traitors. I mean, her books, they just tear down the left. The left are a bunch of traitors. The left are a bunch of liars. The media is too soft on the left and covers up for the left for being a bunch of traitors. So she tears down the left. And everyone has commented, it's been a long time, they've commented that Ann Coulter, despite being, she's not transgender, she's female, but despite being female, she presents in a very masculine way. Her voice, she kind of drops her voice, right? Her voice kind of drops. On top of that, just her choice of words, she presents in a very masculine way. What's going on there? Well, this is something that Sigmund Freud wrote about years ago. It's called penis envy, right? Her father, a traditional FBI conservative guy, whose job was to go around chasing the commies, chasing communists. His whole life's work was following communists around, finding out what communist groups were doing, infiltrating the labor unions like the mine mill union that the communists were part of. That was her whole bread and butter. That was their dad's life, was following leftists around because he hated them. Her dad was a professional leftist hater. And her dad, as an FBI agent, that's a job where they carry a gun. That's a pretty high-level cop job. He probably wanted a boy, not a girl. He wanted to have a son that would grow up to be a very prominent FBI agent, but instead he had a girl. And Anne, most likely, never got the love and validation she wanted from her father because she understood, whether subconsciously or whatever, that her father wanted a boy. And so you have a girl longing for her father's love and affection, and she is trying to be her dad. She's trying to be the boy that her father wants, and she's obsessed with hating those leftists. She's written whole bunches of books about hating leftists, right? And she drops her voice to sound more masculine. And she's trying to be the boy her father wanted. This is classic Freudian penis envy, right? Her dad is a professional left hater. She grows up to be a professional left hater, and she presents in a masculine way. It's actually very, very fascinating. Go and read what Sigmund Freud wrote about penis envy. That's Ann Coulter. It fits like a glove, right? And if you find out that Ann Coulter's father was Jack Coulter, the FBI's anti-communism division, she makes perfect sense. And I find that to be amazing. And maybe you'll look at that and you say, Caleb, that's completely crazy. And who knows? Maybe somebody knows Ann Coulter on a personal level and she's not like that at all. But based on what I understand, having studied Freud and psychoanalysis, and based on now what we know about Ann Coulter's life, I say Ann Coulter is a classic example of penis envy. And I find that to be fascinating. And that again affirms, psychoanalysis is often criticized because they say there is no experiment. There's no way to prove it. And it's true. There is no way to prove any of it, right? It is just basically Sigmund Freud was a doctor who started doing this talk therapy with people. He basically invented talk therapy. And he went around interviewing prisoners, and he went around interviewing college students, and he interviewed hundreds of people about their anxieties and their fears and their issues. And he discovered there were certain patterns that just kept coming up and certain impulses that people have. And I think Freud was very, very good at understanding the Victorian family structure and the way people see things. So I think that's interesting. And I point to Ann Coulter as just a great example of that. And, I look at Ann Coulter, and when I found out who her father was, boom, it all made sense. I understood why Ann Coulter knows weird, obscure information about communism, just like I do. I understood why she presents in a masculine way. I understood why her books are not full of information championing conservative causes, but are just tearing down those evil leftists. I understood it all. And so I point that out. Now, Marjorie Taylor Greene did an interview today on CNN where she opposed Trump's war. I haven't actually watched this. I'm watching this with fresh eyes, but Marjorie Taylor Greene is on fire, right? She is amazing in so many ways. And so this is going to be good. This is Marjorie Taylor Greene on CNN opposing Trump on the war.
13 days in. He's planning on sending more troops to the region, we're told. It's not clear exactly what they'll do while they're there, a Marine group. Is that something you support?
Absolutely not. As a matter of fact, I like many millions and millions of Americans are outraged by this. He never came to America and addressed the nation and gave clear reasons why we would go to war with Iran, especially after he told us back in the summer that he had completely obliterated all of their nuclear capabilities and had even chastised any news organization or media that said otherwise. But here we are.
Very good point. So Trump claimed last summer he completely destroyed all of Iran's nuclear capabilities. So why are we going to war with them again to stop them from getting a nuclear weapon? If last summer Trump insisted it was just a fact that Iran will never be able to get an atomic bomb because he completely destroyed it, and all the media that said they might still be able to get one were lying. So what's going on here? Is he lying now or lying back last summer? He's lying both times. He's lying both times because Iran never wanted a nuclear bomb. Iran has always followed the International Atomic Energy Agency. They have complied to the letter of the Iran nuclear deal, of the non-proliferation treaty. So he was lying both times, actually. But his lies are contradictory. Trump, this war has absolutely no basis. Iran is not going to get a bomb and nuke us. Here we go.
With Iran, and it doesn't make any sense. And I'll go further with this. Why are we sending thousands of more U.S. military troops? Why are we sending more of our military resources? Why are we pulling military resources away from other sectors of the world where it's much needed and putting it all there to fight Iran and to have this war in the Middle East? And the reality is, there are so many innocent people dying. I mean, the little girl's school is such an outrage. It's horrific. And Americans, we don't want to think of our military as being responsible of killing little children. This is absolutely something that Americans should not tolerate.
I must say, this particular CNN anchor, I don't get her. I must say, something's off about her. Like, I mean, I don't know. People might see me on TV and think there's something off about me, but like let's just roll that clip back. Marjorie Taylor Greene is describing a horrendous crime of Trump bombing a girls' elementary school in Iran. Look at the look in that woman's eyes. Like, I see the way that woman reports the news. There's something off, right? And the way her eyes just kind of light up as she's talking about the murder of innocent school children. Like, this anchor, this CNN personality or whatever, has always rubbed me the wrong way, right?
The little girl's school is such an outrage. It's horrific. And America.
Look at her eyes there. She just kind of like, it's like she's like stimulated by it or something. It's so weird. Look at that. Look at the eyes.
Dying. I mean, the little girl's school is such an outrage. It's horrific. And Americans, we don't want to think of our military as being responsible of killing little children. This is absolutely something that Americans should not tolerate. And we.
She's trying not to laugh or something. Like, what the hell is wrong with this woman?
Their own answers. They keep saying that they're investigating, but it is such a serious situation. You know, I drove by an elementary school today, and there were children out on the playground swinging on the swings, and
it's like she's like literally she's like trying not to laugh as Marjorie Taylor Greene is describing innocent children killed by American bombs. Like, what the fuck is wrong with this lady? Look at her. She's like literally trying not to laugh. She wants to just laugh about this.
Playing on the playground. And I thought to myself, I'm so thankful that our children are safe, but I can't imagine living somewhere where school children or people's children have been bombed or killed. And this is something that has so many people outraged, because I'll go back, Caitlin, we did not vote for this. We voted for an end to foreign wars, and that's exactly what we should be seeing.
On the school, so you don't think that their answers so far have been sufficient on who's responsible for that, given the evidence that points to the United States?
You know, I don't want to ever think about our military doing something like that or making that type of mistake or however it happened. But everyone has seen the video. Everyone has seen the still shot of the Tomahawk missile. So no, I think they need to come out and talk about it. There's so many things that are so concerning about this war, and Americans have not been given enough answers. Here we are. Here's Americans at home right now. We've got families getting ready to go on spring break, and gas prices are skyrocketing. Inflation has barely stabilized, and people voted for lower grocery costs. Well, we're going to see costs at the grocery stores going up because diesel is going up and oil is going up because of this war. We've got 30% of the world's fertilizer goes through the strait. That affects our farmers that are struggling already. We voted to put Americans first. I'm a conservative.
She's killing it right now, I gotta say. Like, she's linking it to the struggles of working families back here at home, showing that this is the same corporations and monopolies that are attacking Iran are making life harder and squeezing American working families. This is amazing. This is what socialists used to sound like, right? This is what real anti-imperialists used to sound like. I'm going to roll it back. She is killing it right here. This is amazing. I love Marjorie Taylor Greene. Can she run for president? I would vote for Marjorie Taylor Greene 1,000 times. This woman is she's the only one talking any goddamn sense right now.
So no, I think they need to come out and talk about it. There's so many things that are so concerning about this war, and Americans have not been given enough answers. Here we are. Here's Americans at home right now. We've got families getting ready to go on spring break, and gas prices are skyrocketing. Inflation has barely stabilized, and people voted for lower grocery costs. Well, we're going to see costs at the grocery stores going up because diesel is going up and oil is going up because of this war. We've got 30% of the world's fertilizer goes through the strait. That affects our farmers that are struggling already. We voted to put Americans first. I'm a conservative. I'm the America First wing of the Republican Party. That's how I voted. That's what I fight for. That's what I want to see happen. I want to see Americans put first.
That was amazing. That was absolutely tremendous. I wish that more people could listen to her. And that's what I've said. The only people thinking right now in America are people that are in the dissident MAGA category. Not all of them are MAGA. A lot of them come out of the left like I do. But they're the only people thinking. Look, this is our textbook, right? The second CPI textbook. We have We Are City Builders, and then we have this one, Out of the Movement to the Masses, Anti-Imperialist Organizing in America. And it's a tome. It's a big, big book, right? It's a big, big piece of text. It's got a lot of original texts and speeches in it. It's got Eugene Debs' famous anti-war speech in it. It's got stuff by Elizabeth Gurley Flynn and William Z. Foster. It's got a lot in this book, right? This is our CPI, Anti-Imperialist Organizing in America, Out of the Movement to the Masses. This is our like big master textbook. And on the cover, right, I have the famous image from the 1976 rally in Philadelphia, the rich man's war. We won't fight another rich man's war. The Revolutionary Communist Party, 1976, to counter the bicentennial, they organized this We Won't Fight Another Rich Man's War contingent with Vietnam veterans against the war, which was a coalition that they controlled in their uniforms. So we used that image for the cover of our textbook. But what did we put in? What quotation did we put at the very beginning of the book? Right? This is the quotation that we put at the very, very beginning of the book. What does it say here? What does it say? Unite all the forces that can be united and build a... I'm sorry, I'm having trouble reading it backwards on the screen here. It says, unite all the forces that can be united and build a broad, united front against monopoly capital and against imperialist policies of war and aggression. All right, that's from Mao Zedong. Unite all who can be united and build a broad, united front against monopoly capital and imperialist wars. Right? Unite all the forces that can be united. Build a broad, united front against monopoly capital and the imperialist policies of aggression and war. Let me repeat that. Unite all the forces that can be united to build a broad, united front against monopoly capital and against the imperialist policies of war and aggression. Unite all the forces that can be united, all of them. Doesn't matter if they're pro-transgender or not. Doesn't matter if they're racist. Doesn't matter. Unite all the forces that can be united. Build a broad united front, not a narrow united front, a broad united front against monopoly. So that means small business owners are included. They're not monopoly. Against monopoly capital, not against everyone who owns a business, but against monopoly capital and against the imperialist policies of war and aggression. That is what it's all about, folks. Unite all the forces that can be united and build a broad united front against monopoly capital and the imperialist policies of war and aggression. That is what Mao Zedong wrote in 1963. Unite all who can be united and build a broad united front against monopoly capital and imperialist policies of war and aggression. That is how we started our book, and that is what we aim to do. Lower and deeper to the real masses against monopoly capital. We need an anti-monopoly coalition. We've got to stand against war, right? This book, it's big. It's big. And it costs about $35 on Amazon, but it's worth it because you're getting it's a physically large book and it's pages and pages. It's 500 pages, 500 of these huge pages. You got speeches in there. You read this, you will understand anti-imperialism. I'll tell you that much. We got the Communist Party, William Z. Foster. We got the Maoist movement. We got original texts from all of it. But that is the quote we started it out. We've got to build an anti-imperialist coalition. And speaking of that, there's one more little thing I want to talk about before we open it up for questions. One more little thing, and that is, speaking of broad united front, right? The main organization in America that has worked for peace with North Korea is the Unification Church. That has not always been the case, right? Certainly wasn't the case in the 70s, but it's been true since the fall of the Soviet Union. In 1991, after the fall of the Soviet Union, Dr. Hak Jahan and her husband, the late Reverend Sun Myung Moon, went to North Korea and met with Kim Il-sung. And they reconciled, even though North Korea was their sworn enemy, even though Reverend Moon was actually imprisoned in North Korea. They reconciled. And they became the primary investors in North Korea. And in fact, they were licensed by the American government to invest in North Korea. And they helped North Korea build a car company, a state-run car company. And they built hotels in North Korea. And they are the main organization that has tried to bring American business into North Korea and tried to get the sanctions lifted and tried to bring about peaceful reunification of the Korean Peninsula. All the communist groups have abandoned North Korea, let me add, right? And they have abandoned North Korea, and that, the Communist Party no longer supports them, but, at this point, Trump is pulling the THAAD missile system, right? The Terminal High Altitude Air Defense System, this big missile system that the USA built in South Korea that really angered not just North Korea, but also Russia and China. It's a strike-enabling system. They're pulling that THAAD missile system out of South Korea right now, and they're taking it to the Middle East. I mean, you can't make this up. But anyway, so the Korean Peninsula is actually very important. Right now, that woman in the picture there is in prison in South Korea. She's in jail as her trial is going on. And she is sitting in a jail cell. She's 82 years old, a lifelong peace activist, a lifelong advocate of peace with North Korea. Every year for her birthday, North Korea sends her like a golden statue, right? I mean, they consider her one of their greatest friends. Her husband, who's there, on the other side of Kim Il-sung, when he died, before he died, he was given the Reunification Medal. One of the highest medals that the North Korean government gives out was given to the Reverend Sun Myung-moon for his work supporting North Korea, right? I know that doesn't fit what they were doing in the 70s, okay? But this is 2026, folks, okay? The 1970s, when these folks were very, very anti-communist and all the hippies hated them, that's a long time ago, okay? I know that doesn't fit what you know about them, but the world has changed a lot, okay? And since the 90s, they have been North Korea's biggest friends in America, while all the communist groups have betrayed North Korea. The Communist Party no longer supports North Korea, cut all ties, right? The various communist groups have all abandoned North Korea, but these folks are still advocating a better relationship with North Korea. And she's sitting in prison right now on trumped up bribery charges. And I've interviewed people on this channel, and I've actually spoken at rallies supporting her defense. And the reason I'm bringing this up is not only at the same time that she's sitting in the jail cell in South Korea while her bribery trial just goes on and on and on, right? And they had to take her out of the court on Wednesday because she was having health issues. They had to take her from the courtroom to the hospital. I mean, this is an 82-year-old woman. They're torturing her. Right. It's revenge. It's political vendettas in South Korean politics. It's a big mess, but she's being tortured right now. It's just horrendous what they're doing. At the same time, they've outlawed their church in Japan. Right. Their church in Japan has been forcibly dissolved by the Japanese government because of fundraising practices that went on in the past. Well, they've admitted that, yeah, there were people in their church that broke the law and fundraised illegally, and those people have been kicked out of the church, and those people should be prosecuted, right? If you do illegal fundraising, they can't support that. But you can't outlaw an entire religion just because somebody involved violates the law, right? The Catholic Church, right? There were those priests that were molesting people. Well, no one's going to outlaw the Catholic Church. They're going to throw those priests who did that in jail, and they should, right? Molesting children is not okay, right? And, yeah, there were people in Japan that were fundraising improperly, and they should be held accountable for that. But you can't outlaw the church. But they have forcibly seized all of the assets of her church in Japan. So these folks are organizing a protest in Washington, D.C. on Wednesday. March 19th, Wednesday, they are going to have a rally in Washington, D.C. at the Japanese embassy. And they're trying to get hundreds and hundreds of people there to stand up for religious freedom in Japan. I don't think I'm going to be able to be there personally because of life circumstances. I didn't, it was kind of called last minute. I just heard about it today, and I've got family obligations on that day. It sounds very important. I have spoken at rallies that they have done in the past. I actually gave remarks at their rally in Times Square to support Dr. Hak Jahan. I have supported them in the past, and I will continue supporting them. They're being persecuted because they want peace on the Korean Peninsula. They're being persecuted because they want better relations with North Korea. And so I just wanted to mention that they're having this rally in Washington, D.C. I guess, this is some of the, the rallies that we did. This is the rally we did in January in Times Square to support her amid the trial. And now they're having a rally for religious freedom in Washington, D.C., kind of an emergency rally they're doing now. Their church has been, had its property forcibly seized in Japan. So, I think these folks are being unfairly treated, and they do advocate peace with North Korea. And North Korea is the flagship of global anti-imperialism. I mean, North Korean forces are fighting in Donbass right now to defend Russia. In case you didn't know that, right? North Korean forces provided personal security to Robert Mugabe, for many years. I bet you didn't know that, right? This is actually the monument to African Renaissance in Senegal that was built by the Democratic People's Republic of Korea. Amazing, amazing. Look at this. It's a father, a muscular, strong father holding a baby with a beautiful, beautiful woman, and they're pointing to the future. They're pointing to the future. This is a beautiful monument. It's against everything that's coming out of the West. It is pro-natal. It celebrates physical strength. It celebrates the family, right? A mom and a dad and a baby. It celebrates Black power and African power. It celebrates physical strength. It is optimistic. This monument incarnates everything I believe in, right? You look at that monument, that's what I believe. I believe in the future of the people of the world, the colonized and oppressed people of the world, breaking out of imperialism and building up themselves, looking optimistically, having love and community and family, and building themselves up and pushing back the forces of pessimism, right? And you look at this beautiful monument that the Koreans built. They're not even from there, right? They're not Africans, but they stand with the African people. Kim Il-sung was a huge supporter of the African liberation movement, so much so that the Black Panthers admired North Korea and were welcomed to North Korea. Eldridge Cleaver lived in North Korea for a while, and the Juche ideology was something the Black Panthers studied. The support that North Korea gave to people around the world struggling for their national liberation against imperialism is utterly amazing. And you look at this, and you look at what we're up against in the West with all the hopelessness and all the pessimism, right? And all the idea that, growth is bad, we don't need growth, and all the unemployment and all the belief that there is no future. You look at that monument in Senegal, the monument of African Renaissance. That is what I believe in. That is the future, right? And we are in the process. We have a pamphlet that's going to be distributed all over this country. We're getting it printed that has, among many other things, it has an image of that in it. And I can't wait to get that image into the hands of thousands of college students, right? That is what we are fighting for. And that's what Russia is fighting for. And that's what China is fighting for. That's what Iran is fighting for right now. It's what Venezuela is fighting for, what Cuba is fighting for, right? That's anti-imperialism. You want to look at this image, that's what anti-imperialism is. It is looking towards the future. It's not rage. It's not vengeance. It's not, I'm mad that somebody has more than me. It's that we ourselves can build ourselves up. We can break the chains that bind us. We can march forward on the road to liberation. That image is what I'm all about. And that's what the Korean people have been doing on the Korean Peninsula since the end of the Second World War. That's what People's Korea, that is surrounded, that is isolated, that is attacked. That's that image, that beautiful, beautiful monument that they built in Senegal. That is what gives me hope. I am an advocate of the new world beyond colonialism. I'm an advocate of the BRICS economy. And I know that the only future my country, America, is ever going to have is when we can join the new world and be multipolar, be part of the new rising economy. That's the only future we're going to have. We're not gonna defeat the BRICS world. The British Empire system, the global financial system that dominates the world, Wall Street and London, that system is doomed. And around the world, there are countries that have broken out of it, and they have governments that come out of anti-colonial revolutions that are building themselves up and organizing the economy rationally to unleash growth. That's the future. And that is the future of the world. And, and that's just the case. And America needs to not be enemies of these countries, but it needs to join the new world. We need a government of action in this country that fights for working families and invests in communities, right? We need an economy in America that is organized to serve public good and not the profits of a wealthy few. And I look at North Korea and how they have just withstood and built themselves up in the face of so much, and it inspires me every day. I am an anti-imperialist to my core. And the reason all the communists hate me is because the communists don't believe in anti-imperialism. They believe in Trump is a racist. They believe in transgender. They believe in whatever. I actually believe in anti-imperialism. And when Gaddafi was murdered by Barack Hussein Obama, I was angry that they weren't doing more to protest that war. I was angry. I was furious that they wouldn't do anything about it. That's because they were too busy pandering to the Democrat Party. The group I was in spent more time and resources trying to convince me that Libya was not really socialist and that Gaddafi was not a real Marxist than they did opposing the war. Right? There was not a single civil disobedience to stand in solidarity with Libya. It was absolutely outrageous. But as soon as Barack Obama and CNN started saying Black Lives Matter, and that was the cool hip thing to do, they were all over it, right? I believe in anti-imperialism, and I have been persecuted for that, right? I believe in anti-imperialism. I am an anti-imperialist to my core. I understand how this globalist imperialist system that reduces us all to a financial calculation, that puts profits over people, that is grinding the world into poverty. I understand why that system is doomed and why the new world is going to rise. And it's not about human rights, and it's not about communism versus capitalism. It's about colonialism and imperialism and degrowth and the new world that is rising. I understand this in a way that others don't. And we have a new synthesis, a new breakthrough in understanding it called innovationism. And the innovationist perspective is the only way that you can be an anti-imperialist in this country. Look, a lot of these people out there think that they can be anti-imperialist, but if you're still trying to rebuild the Soviet Union, you're not going to be anti-imperialist, right? And if your ideology is still based on resentment and jealousy and the idea that somehow growth is bad, or the idea that somehow having employees is immoral because you're exploiting people, you're not going to understand anti-imperialism. We understand anti-imperialism here. We understand economics. We understand it. Right. And I'll tell you, knowledge is power. Right. There's an old story. I was just thinking about this today. There's an old story of an ancient king. This ancient king, he had a number of sorcerers and, sorcerers and wizards and soothsayers who were like his advisors. And he pointed among them and he said, which one of you is the most powerful? Which one of you is the most powerful? One wizard raised his hand. He said, I am the most powerful. And the king said, prove to me that you are the most powerful. He said, all right, I'll prove it to you. And he said, tomorrow, at a very specific time, we'll all go outside and I will demonstrate my power for all of you. And the king looked at his schedule and he said, can we do it earlier? He said, no, it's got to be at this specific time. He said, can we do it another day? No, it must be at this specific time. But if you gather outside at this very specific time on this very specific day, I will be able to demonstrate my power. So, okay, the specific time of day came, and the specific day, the specific time, and all the king's courts were gathered, and the wizard stood there in front of everybody, and he said, everyone, I am going to make the sun go away. And everyone laughed. They said, that's ridiculous. You're going to make the sun go away? And he said, no, I will make the sun go away. And they said, do it. And he said, no, I can't do it for another 5 minutes. But in 5 minutes, I will make the sun go away. People are laughing. What is this? What is this? They start the clock. And it finally gets to 5 minutes. And then the wizard holds up his hand. And he holds his hand like this. And there's an eclipse. And everyone panics. And they say, oh, my God, he made the sun go away. How did he make the sun go away? And he says, this is my power. I'm making the sun go away. And finally, the eclipse passes, and everyone's like, wow, this guy's the most powerful wizard. And that wizard walked away. And everyone said, wow, that guy is the most powerful wizard. But here's the thing. How did he do it? He was an astronomer, and he knew that there was going to be a solar eclipse on that day. And he knew the exact time of the solar eclipse. He didn't use his own, he didn't actually make the sun go away with his mighty power, but he had knowledge, and knowledge is power. And he knew that there was going to be a solar eclipse that day, and he knew the rotations of the sun. And so he was able, with his knowledge, to appear very, very powerful. And the king believed he was the most powerful wizard. And that shows you that knowledge is power, and knowledge can be power. And that he didn't literally make the sun go away, but why? Because he knew when the eclipse was coming. And because he had a knowledge of astronomy and etc., and he understood all of that, he was able to demonstrate his power. And you think about that story, right? It's interesting because a lot of times what we think of as magic and spirituality isn't exactly what it appears to be. But at the end of the day, that wizard wasn't lying when he said he was the most powerful wizard, because none of the other wizards and sorcerers knew that there was going to be an eclipse that day. He was the only one who had correct knowledge of how the universe worked, and he knew exactly when that eclipse was going to be. And so in a way, he wasn't lying. He was the most powerful wizard. He was the most powerful soothsayer, the most powerful spiritual guide that the king could have. I love that story. I think it's a really important story because it points to how things are not always as they appear, but yet they are, in a way. So on that note, folks, I am going to put on the North Korean national anthem because I just like listening to it. I got fired up there about innovationism and all of that. But send me some questions for the second half of the show. You can do, the best way to do it is go to buymeacoffee.com and /Caleb Maupin. Send me a question. Send me a question for the second half of the show. Buymeacoffee.com /Caleb Maupin. You can also do Rumble Rants. You can also cash at me. But yeah, that's how you can do it. Send me a question. And I am going to put on the North Korean national anthem, and then we'll do the roll call, and then I'll answer any questions. I'll start with the Cash App someone sent me this morning. I'll be answering that one. And then from there, we'll be done. So here we go. This is the North Korean national anthem, and then we'll do the roll call. All right, everybody. Names and locations. I will call you all out as I see you. Names and locations, names and locations. Who is with us tonight? Names and locations, names and locations. Who is with us? Who is with us? Names and locations. Brooklyn in the house. Phil, good to see you, Phil. Good to see you. Good evening, David, Lee, and JT. Ryan in Kansas City. Good to see you. Good to see you. Good to see you. Names and locations. Auckland, New Zealand. St. David's, Bermuda, David Fox in Bendigo, Australia, St. David's in Bermuda, Liverpool, United Kingdom, Pensacola, Florida, JT 24 in Mississippi, Jenny in Cincinnati, Alex in Brazil, Patch in Arizona, Gabby in Chicago, Mohsen in Mecca, Saudi Arabia. Wow. All right. Robert in New Jersey. Go and subscribe to his channel. He's got a great YouTube channel. He does a lot of good stuff there. Al in Sydney. Good to see you, Al. Ellie in Chicago. Good to see you, Ellie. You're always an appreciated member here. Reich, Berlin Reich. Good to see you. Jane in New Zealand. Diana in Orlando, Florida. Good to see you. Names and locations, folks. Names and locations. Names and locations. I will call you all out as I see you. Names and locations. Names and locations. Names and locations. Anybody else? Anybody else? John in Chicago. We love you, John. Good to see you. Good to see you. Good to see you. We got a great group of folks in the Center for Political Innovation. We have an amazing bunch of people. Looks like I might be able to see some of the people from around the country at the end of the month. You know, there's some different plans going on. And oh, Canada is in the house. Good to see you. Phil is in the house in Brooklyn, and Canada is in the house. All right. Very good. Very good. We always have a lot of people from English-speaking countries outside of America. Have you ever noticed that? I wonder if that's like I'm suppressed in America, but you can watch me in Canada and Australia. I mean, you're all welcome. I have no problem with New Zealanders and Aussies and Canadians watching, but I always wonder, why is it there's so many people from the English-speaking world? I mean, I am speaking English, but not American. I mean, I feel like that's got something to do with algorithms or something. But look, we're not trying to win the internet. We're building a real movement here. We're building a real organization, and that is what we're doing. We are in the streets organizing, and we've been out there, and nobody organizes like we organize. So join the Center for Political Innovation. We are doing real stuff. So, all right. So if you got a question, go to buymeacoffee.com/Caleb Maupin. You know, we've got 2 Buy Me a Coffees that have already come in. Somebody sent me a Rumble rant or a Cash App question this morning, which I got. That'll be the first thing I answer. And Hempcar has sent a number of Rumble rants. So we got plenty to talk about. So we'll start with the question that came in this morning. Right. The question that I received on the Cash App this morning that came in. Kind of surprised me, but hey, I'll take it. Richard asked, Iran in the 80s was allied with Syria and Libya. Yes, that is true. Syria and Iraq were both Ba'athist Arab socialist countries, right? They were both countries that were Arab nationalist governments that had the ideology of Ba'athist Arab socialism. So, right, in the Middle East, you know, there are many different anti-imperialist ideologies, but Arab nationalism, right? There are many different ethnic groups in the Middle East. The Iranians are Persians, right? They're not Arabs, but Arabs are the biggest ethnic group in the Middle East, right? Saudi Arabia, Jordan, Qatar, etc. But there are also Turkmen that are of Turkish descent. There are also Kurds, Kurdish descent. There are many different ethnic groups among the Middle East, but Arabs are one of the biggest. And Arab nationalism is an ideology that is fighting for the Arab people. The goal of Arab nationalists is to create one Arab country, because you have to remember all those borders that were drawn up are not real, right? Those borders were drawn up by the British Empire. The British were friends with the House of Saud, a monarchist, you know, family in Saudi Arabia. They were all conquered by Turkey, by the Ottoman Empire. And after World War I, they drew lines on a map. They gave Syria to France. They found a king and put him in charge of Iraq, who was a puppet of the British. And that those borders are not real. There's one Arab people. There is one Arab nation. They speak Arabic, and there's one Arab nation. Those borders were just drawn up artificially. They were all colonized by Turkey. So after the Second World War, there was a wave of Arab nationalism, and Ba'athist Arab socialism started in Syria. And in Syria, there was a guy named Michel Aflaq, and he was a communist. He was a member of the Syrian Communist Party, and he was from a Christian family. He was a communist atheist. But France colonized Syria, right? Syria was colonized by the French. After World War I, the French got Syria. The Sykes-Picot Agreement, they gave Syria to the French as a colony. And France was on the anti-fascist side of World War II. So the French government, the French communists and the communists of Syria were told, focus on fighting fascism, don't fight French imperialism. And Michel Aflaq, he was an Arab who believed in the Arab people and in their struggle against imperialism. So he quit the Communist Party. He started his own group called the Ba'ath Socialist Party. And Ba'ath means resurrection or rebirth. The Arab Resurrection Party, the Arab Rebirth Party, the Arab Renaissance Party, the Ba'athist Arab Socialist Party, the Arab Resurrection or Arab Rebirth Party. That's what Ba'ath means, B-A-A-T-H, right? It's an Arabic word that means resurrection or rebirth or renaissance. It's translated different ways, but it means, rebounding. And he formed his own communist party because he didn't believe that that the Arab people should subordinate their struggle to the needs of the Soviet Union. So he formed his own group that heavily drew from Marxism. They quoted Marx. They talked about overproduction and the tendency of the falling rate of profit. And another thing about Ba'athist Arab socialism was that they supported Islam politically, which is very interesting. They believed in having a secular government. But they saw, Michel Aflaq was from a Christian family, but he converted to Islam because he said Islam is the religion of the Arab people. These are my people. And Islam is their spiritual expression, right? Muhammad was an Arab. And so I convert to Islam because that is the religion of my people. And there are Christian Baathists and there are atheistic Baathists, but Baathists generally embrace Islam because they see it as an expression of the greatness of the Arab people. So that's called Ba'athist Arab socialism. Right now, the first Arab socialist government was in Egypt. It was Abdel Nasser. He was not a Ba'athist. But in Syria, the Ba'athist party was formed. In Iraq, the Baathists took power. Saddam Hussein was in the Ba'athist party. And in Syria, Hafez Assad also took power. He was a Ba'athist. Syria and Iraq had a falling out. Right. And in Iraq, Michel Aflaq, the founder of Baathism, was a supporter of Saddam Hussein, and he supported Saddam Hussein. But the Syrian government that was Ba'athist, they didn't support Iraq, and there was a divide. The divide had a lot to do with the Soviet Union. Iraq was a lot less friendly to the Soviet Union than Syria was. Syria was, being heavily invested in by the Soviet Union. The Syrian government allowed the Communist Party into the government, formed a coalition with the Communist Party. Whereas in Iraq, Saddam Hussein executed and hanged the leaders of the Communist Party for being allegedly Soviet spies. And he cooperated with the United States on many different occasions. Now, I believe Iraq and Syria were both socialist countries, but Saddam Hussein was pretty anti-Soviet in his policies, whereas Syria was pretty pro-Soviet in its policies. So Iraq and Syria split up. When Iran had its 1979 revolution, Iran's revolution, remember, was not an Arab revolution because they're not Arabs in Iran, they're Persians. And it was not a secular or a socialist revolution. It was a Shia Islamic revolution, right? And the thing about the reason that Islamists get a lot of strength in the Middle East is that they don't care about your race, right? Arab socialism is for Arabs only, right? It's trying to advance one race, but Shia Islam, anyone can convert to Islam. Anyone can accept Islam, right? And it's a religious government, right? And so after the 1979 revolution, racism of any kind was outlawed by the Islamic constitution. Still to this day, it is illegal in Iran to be a racist, and as a result, the Islamic revolution that was advocating a Shia Islamic government and was rejecting nationalism, right, and was especially not Arab nationalism, right, came to power. And so Iraq was very threatened by Iran because about 60% of the Iraqi people are Shia Muslims. And there was a fear that the Shia clerics would lead some kind of revolt against Saddam Hussein in the name of Shia Islam, right? And that the Shia clerics inspired by Iran would oppose Saddam Hussein. So Saddam Hussein invaded Iran, and there was the Iraq-Iran war. When the Iraq-Iran war happened, Syria, that didn't like Saddam Hussein, they aligned with Iran, and Libya also aligned with Iran. Now, there was another issue, which was Afghanistan, and this is where it gets complicated. In Afghanistan, you had a very, very atheistic and anti-religious government that took power in 1978 in the Sour Revolution. It was the generals in the Afghan army. Afghanistan had a monarchy, and the Soviet Union bordered Afghanistan. And the Soviet Union, in order to, make friends with Afghanistan, Afghanistan was neutral between the United States and the Soviet Union. they offered military training to a lot of the top generals in the Afghan army. So there were a lot of Afghan generals, and Afghanistan's a very poor country, but the Soviet Union was a superpower. So there were a lot of Afghan generals that got flown to Moscow, got military training, got, and so there were a number of generals in the Afghan army that liked the Soviet Union. And there was a political party in Afghanistan called the People's Democratic Party. It was a communist party, but they were the People's Democratic Party. So what happened is Brzezinski, who was the national security advisor, he created what he later called the Afghan trap. And they put pressure on the Afghan government to imprison these generals that were communists, that were pro-Soviet. And so these generals were being put in jail. And basically the king of Afghanistan was having a big anti-communist crackdown. And so most of the military, though, had been trained by the Soviet Union, liked these generals that were pro-Soviet. So when the Afghan king started cracking down on the pro-Soviet forces, they just had a revolution, and the military overthrew the Afghan government. But it wasn't really a revolution. It was what you might call a premature revolution, right? The military of Afghanistan had gotten pro-Soviet training, but the population of Afghanistan was not largely in the cities. It was in the rural areas. And the population of Afghanistan was not on board with communism. And they were largely deeply religious. And the generals tended to be focused on modernizing Afghanistan and trying to be modern, and were very, very atheistic. And so the generals took power, and the People's Democratic Republic of Afghanistan was created. And they immediately did things that were very good, like they launched a literacy campaign to teach women to read. And they brought the Soviet Union in to help them build up their agriculture and build up their crops. There's a very good book I have called Afghanistan, Washington's Secret War that goes over the history of this war. It's really wild. But so the generals from the People's Democracy Party are in power in Afghanistan. And the population of Afghanistan are largely rural people that are religious and don't agree with the communist ideology. So Osama bin Laden, a wealthy Saudi, ended up in Afghanistan, and he started recruiting Muslims from all over the world to build an Islamic jihadist movement against the pro-Soviet government of Afghanistan. Well, Iran, it's an Islamic government, right? Iran has an Islamic government, and they of course are against an atheistic communist government. And they're also against Saddam Hussein. And so they took the position, they took the position of supporting the Wahhabis, the Taliban forces in Afghanistan against the Soviet Union. Libya, under Gaddafi's leadership, they were a secular government, but they were also Muslims. And they also took the position of supporting the Mujahideen of Afghanistan. And Syria, because they were opposed to Iraq, they also took that position. Now, Iraq supported the Soviet Union in Afghanistan, I believe, if I'm correct. Let me check on that. Is that true? Did Saddam Hussein support USSR in Afghanistan? I think he did. Yes, Saddam Hussein supported the Soviet Union, right? So that was the issue there, right? That Iraq was aligned with the Soviet Union and Afghanistan. They were for a secular government, and they were, at that point taking more pro-Soviet positions. Syria, Iran, and Libya took the anti-Soviet position. And then in the Iraq-Iran war, Syria supported Iran. The government of Gaddafi in Libya supported Iran, and Iraq was opposing them. So that's what that was about. And I hope that clears it up. And thank you, Richard, for sending that question. I'm sorry. I'll try not to say deeply religious, Gavin. I'm not trying to offend anybody. I'm trying to distinguish between, the overwhelming majority of Baathists were Sunni Muslims. Okay. But they didn't advocate a religious government, right? Whereas Iran's government is people call it a theocracy. It is an Islamic republic. There's a big difference there, right? One is religious. Most Baathists are Sunni Muslims, but they're not advocates of a religious state, right? And they recognize Islam in the Constitution of Iraq and the Constitution of Syria. Both said Islam is a great religion that represents people, and stuff like that. But they weren't religious governments. Whereas in Iran's government, it is Islamic jurisprudence. It is Islamic. It is a people use the word theocracy. And it is that, I guess you could say. It is ruled by religious authorities, right? That sounds insulting, but there you go. But anyway, I want to be sensitive to people, and I really am tired of the anti-religious sentiment in America right now. And I mean, so please don't misinterpret me as being on the wrong side here. But anyway, so now we're going to answer some other questions. Trumborder said, quote, I know some of those 25% war supporters that you're talking about. During peacetime, they agree with us about being against pointless wars because Trump says it. But when push comes to shove, they fall in line. Any lame excuse given by the U.S. is enough for them to make war totally pointless at the time. 10 years from now, they'll denounce this war while supporting the next one. What do you think is behind this gullibility? Couple things. Number one, that 25% that you're describing, the reason that they're against wars is because Trump was saying that, and they like Trump. It's just they're kind of worshiping Trump on a personal level, right? And they like Trump because they view him as, they're angry at the establishment, which is good, okay? That's good. The 51% are not mad at the establishment. These people are actually angry at the establishment. That's good. But they blindly support Trump because it's like he gets their anger out, right? There are some weird turns of, well, never mind. But anyway, they see Trump as like their big mean daddy who's going to beat up the establishment for them, is basically what they see it as. They're mad at the establishment, and Trump is this big, strong guy who's going to take the establishment and punch it in the face. And they have this like anger at the establishment. And so when Trump, especially when Trump does mean things, they assume that that's Trump beating up the establishment. When Trump sends ICE to terrorize people, well, that's the establishment that he's terrorizing, so it must be good, right? When Trump, bombs Iran, well, the liberals are all Muslims and they're all communists, so that's what they're thinking. Okay. The other thing is, a lot of these people, and this is a big thing, right? And to be fair, the opposition to wars, anti-war sentiment is highest in the military right now. But that said, there is a very strong military influence among conservatives, right? Look, my town, I grew up in a small town in Ohio. A lot of people that I went to school with went to the military, right? But in New York City, I know people who've never met no one from their school went into the military, because it's like, oh, we don't do that. We're wealthy, middle-class white people in New York City. People don't go into the military, but it's a very working class thing. Folks, here's the crazy thing. I found a YouTube channel the other day that was a racist YouTube channel by a female comedian from New York City. And it was interesting because she does the exact opposite of what woke people does. People in New York City don't understand that there are white people in prison. There are white people who serve in the military. There are white people who work low-wage jobs. There are white people who die from drug overdoses. This country's full of them, right? I mean, the prisons of America, a lot of white people are in them. The people who die from drug overdoses in America, a lot of white people in it, a lot of white people dying from drug overdoses, and people in America that are in the military. The military is full of white people. But in New York City and in, wealthy hipster centers, they assume that only black people die from drug overdoses. Only black people go to prison. Only black people serve in the military. It makes no goddamn sense to me. And communists think this too, right? Communists think this too. I was told by many communists, all white people are rich. No white people they don't understand that trailer parks exist. They don't understand that West Virginia and the Appalachian people exist, right? These communists, they think all white people are urban middle-class white people. Urban middle-class white people exist, right? And they don't go to prison, and they don't serve in the military, and they don't die of drug overdoses. Some of them might die of drug overdoses, but for different reasons. But that's a whole nother issue. But I was watching this comedian, this racist white woman from New York City, who's a comedian, and it's funny because she also thinks that no white people go to prison and no white people serve in the military and no white people die of overdoses. She just thinks that's good. And I was watching her, and I'm just like, I'm just like, this is crazy, right? It's kind of the opposite. Usually the Trump populists try to say, well, white workers are forgotten. That's usually their line. But this woman, she's just a racist, right? She's just a racist. So that was interesting. And she was just saying, oh, white people are good because, and she was, I thought it was weird, but it's like leftists don't think that poor white workers exist, right? And they think every poor white worker is in the Ku Klux Klan and is their enemy. Right. And that's, and I've ranted about that on these streams so many times. You don't want to hear it again, but anyhow, what point was I making? I was making a point, but anyway, the military is a really big influence in those communities. Right. And there are a lot of people, this happens with every war, right? I saw this with the Iraq war. Many people are against the war until it starts, and then they feel like they're not allowed to oppose it because their relative is in the military. They feel like if I'm against this war, I'm disrespecting my relative who's fighting over there. A lot of moms and dads feel that way. They're against this war, but then their daughter or their son is over there fighting in the Middle East, and they're like, shit, I want my daughter or son to know that I have their back, that I'm on their side. I don't want them to be harmed. So I have to act like I support the war. I have to, and that happens. I saw that in my little town. There were people I knew that were against the war, but when it started, they had to support our troops sign. Well, my cousin, he's in the army. I need him to know that I'm his friend. It's really unfortunate. It's really, really unfortunate. It's not as bad as it used to be, right? Again, when the Iraq war happened in 2003, 2004, I lived in a small town in Ohio, and everyone had seen Forrest Gump, and everyone had been told that, years ago in Vietnam, there were these people that were against the war that spit on our soldiers and disrespected them and called them baby killers. And that's why you should never protest a war ever again. And anyone who protests a war is a bad person, just like Jane Fonda. And there was this whole Vietnam, Rambo, Forrest Gump narrative that people had in their head. And that doesn't exist anymore. That's gone. Right. In fact, military personnel opposed the war more than anybody. And like I said, the dissident MAGA are the only people thinking right now. But you're talking about that 25% of MAGA that just blindly support this. It's wanting to support the military and never oppose the military. That's part of it. Blindly supporting Trump and liking on kind of a sadistic level. They enjoy seeing Trump hurt people. And that's the same thing that the left has, right? And let's be real. Vengeance, resentment, these are dangerous things. If anything that you do in life that is motivated by wanting to get revenge on somebody, wanting to punish somebody else, wanting to take down somebody else is always going to lead bad. And the left, they're kings of that, right? Abolish billionaires. I don't want to abolish billionaires. I want a rationally planned economy so that the wealth of the world can just grow and grow and grow, and everyone can live like a billionaire. But abolish billionaires, check your privilege. That's all on the left. And these 25% of people, they're mad at woke people. They're mad at the globalists. They're mad at, I don't know what they're mad at, liberal elitists. And so Trump is hurting people, so it must be good. You shouldn't ever want other people to be hurt in general, right? You shouldn't ever want other people to be hurt. That doesn't mean people shouldn't fight back or whatever, but never. And in politics, if your desire, if something is if your motivation in politics is, I support this because I want someone to be hurt, stop. Look in the mirror, no matter what side you're on, right? If you're a socialist because those rich people have got it too good and I want them, stop, right? If you're a conservative because those Muslims, they've got it too good, stop, right? If you're a conservative because those immigrants, stop, right? If you're a feminist because those men have it too, stop, right? It's totally okay to want people that are downtrodden and want people that are suffering to have their suffering alleviated, to be empowered and lifted up. But you shouldn't ever want to tear anybody down. And no matter where it is in politics, I don't care if it's the right, the left, the center, the backwards, if anything you do in politics is motivated by somebody else I want to harm, alarm bells should go off in your head and you should say, this is spiritually dangerous. Anything, right? And I've learned that the hard way. I'm somebody who comes out of the left. I used to be very, very motivated by revenge and rage, but I'm past that now. And I try to be. I mean, that doesn't mean I don't catch myself every so often getting upset and all of that. But you cannot build anything healthy, politically, spiritually, career-wise. Anything that's motivated by taking other people down is not going to lead anywhere good, right? And with these Trump people, their support for Trump, the 25% that we're talking about, in essence, it is rage against the establishment. And so when they see Trump hurting people or doing mean things, no matter who it's to, it brings them satisfaction. And that means that it's a spiritually contaminated support for Trump. But let's not focus on that negative. The 25% that voted for Trump but now oppose his wars, those are the only people that are thinking right now, right? And we need to help people think even more. So there you go. And the next question we got is actually related to that. John said, Carrie Prigine Baller from the Religious Freedom Commission, she was fired for being for being anti-Israel and Catholic. I mean, she was fired for being Catholic. I think she was fired for being anti-Israel and Catholic, and Thomas Massie is defending her. And I saw Tucker Carlson has released a long interview with her. She's kind of an interesting figure. She was, I think, wasn't she like Miss America, or wasn't she like Miss America or something? Or what was she? She was Carrie Brigitte Boiler, right? She was a model. She was Miss California. And when she made clear that she was against gay marriage, they stripped her of her title for her religious beliefs. She's a Roman Catholic, and she is not in favor of gay marriage. So they took her title away from her. And so many people on the right, kind of held her up as an example of Christians being persecuted. And I agree with that, right? Would they take it away from a Muslim for being against gay marriage? No. Would they take it away from an Orthodox Jew for being against gay marriage? No. But oh my God, right-wing Christian, it's so ridiculous. It's so ridiculous. It's just like these, PSL people. I see PSL people all the time. You look at any of their rallies about abortion, they'll on the bullhorn. Oh, anyone who's against abortion is a fascist. Anyone against abortion is a Nazi. And then go to their Palestine rallies and look at all the people, the women in headscarves, all the Muslim American men. Do you think those people are pro-gay marriage? Do you think those people are pro-abortion? But I don't think you think they're Nazis, are they? Interesting. But yeah, she was Miss California. They stripped her of her title for being against gay marriage, which is complete bullshit, right? Complete bullshit. And so she was kind of held up as an example of Christians being persecuted, but she is anti-Israel, and she sees that Israel goes against Christian values. So Trump fired her from the White House Faith Commission. And Thomas Massie is defending her. Very good. Now, she says that Paula White Cain is one of her worst enemies, and that Paula White Cain is the one persecuting her. If that's true, that really lowers my opinion of Paula White Cain and makes me want to defend Paula White Cain a lot less, if that's true, right? If Paula White Cain got her fired, that's reprehensible. So I tend to feel pretty positive on Paula White Cain, despite being anti-Israel, and she's pro-Israel. But if that's true, that she's getting people fired and stuff, that I will reconsider my position. But that said, I am looking forward to watching that Tucker Carlson interview with her. And I've retweeted her a few times. And I mean, Carrie Brigitte Boiler sounds like, somebody who's standing up for Palestine. So there we go. Now, Jane from New Zealand said, Caleb, you asked why people in New Zealand, Canada, Australia, and the UK listen to you so much when CPI is for Americans. I doubt that it's the algorithm so much as it is that there is no one in our countries saying the things that you say or close to it. Okay. We can share CPI stuff to our American online friends, and we regularly do. Well, thank you for doing that. I first heard of CPI saying Russia is not our enemy in 2022 when I was heading to Russia, despising the New Zealand government. The New Zealand government applied sanctions to New Zealand Russians of any political persuasion that prevented elderly Russians here from being able to receive their pension from Russia because all the money was frozen. That's appalling treatment of Russian people that was never rectified and changed how I thought of politics forever. To see these elderly people left high and dry and the whole Russian community silenced with a media blackout on the issue. I've listened to you in your live streams since that time, and I look forward to your live streams. Please keep doing so. Jane, that is amazing. Thank you for sharing your story. I had no idea that they did that to the Russians living in New Zealand. That is absolutely awful. And I also think it's great that you found us through that moment. And wow, you blew my mind there, Jane. I've known you as Jane from New Zealand, Jane NZ. I never knew how you found us. That is a great, great, great story. Thank you. Thank you for sharing. That is really a really great story. And I really, really appreciate that. And Jane, you are a beloved member of our community. We come on here night after night after night. I wouldn't be doing this if I didn't believe in this. I'll just tell you that much. There's so many people who think, oh, he's just in this to make money. You think I'm making money from this? Right? They've demonetized my channel and I'm still streaming just as much as I always did. So, I really believe in what I'm saying on here. And I really am an anti-imperialist to my core. I've been canceled by the so-called left and the communist movement where I started out. And I just continue to be an anti-imperialist, and they throw everything at me. They've done everything they can to me, and I'm still here because I believe in what I'm doing, and I'm just going to keep going. So thank you, Jane. I'm glad that you're here. You've been here since 2022, and our community is always growing. Thank you, thank you, thank you, and I appreciate your words. There are people in Australia. David Fox has got the Great Southern Discussion Club, and there's in Britain, you've got people that are similar to us, not the same. Workers' Party, George Galloway, you got the CPGBML, and there are different people, but you know what? We can overcome the internet, the rigged internet, absolutely. Absolutely. Now, Gabby sent a question. And Gabby's question that she sent is, why do you think the future holds for dissident MAGA? Especially since Trump isn't really keeping many of his promises. I seem like there could be a moment for CPI to reach out and listen and understand where they're coming from. How would you convince them the answer is building a mass movement? A lot of their frustration with the system is something many working people feel. How can we help show that what we need is a government of action that fights for working families? Just go out there and do it, I'm assuming. Well, we need to find them and talk to them, right? And that's anything that might be a place where a dissident MAGA person might go. That's where we need to be. And, it's not like there's meetups or whatever. We need to figure out where dissident MAGA people are and engage them. And that's what this outreach campaign that we're about to launch is all about, right? And it looks like we'll be launching it at the end of March. Fingers crossed. There's a couple loose ends that need to be tied up, but it looks like we're going to be launching an outreach campaign at the end of March, and some exciting things are happening, but we just have to do outreach. There is no other way. We can't do it with tailism and just whatever the issue is. I mean, the protests we do are really important, but we do them by ourselves, right? We don't join the liberal rallies. We do our own rallies. Number one, we do them theatrically with really exciting signs and all that. We have our own style of protest, right? We're not in the protest cage. We do our own thing. That's one thing. On the other hand, we have to just do outreach. And, we have a new piece of literature that's going to be distributed in bulk pretty soon. We got some great stuff going on. So hold your horses, and you'll be involved, Gabby. I know that you'll be involved. And so a lot of great things are happening. But at the end of the day, we just have to talk to people. We just have to talk to people. And that outreach. We are an outreach-oriented organization. 2 years ago, in 2024, we had our innovationist turn, and we became an outreach-focused organization, and we stopped being communists. And that was important. That was an important turn. And one of my goals was, I said, well, I want to make us outreach-oriented, and we've done it, right? Every meeting, we talk about outreach. But now we're going to phase number 2 is we're gonna get our outreach down to a method. Because right now we do outreach, but it's just kind of like whatever people feel like saying. Well, now we need to develop an outreach method. And that's the next stage. And so we're going to launch a campaign where we train our members to do certain types of outreach. And that's our next stage. So if you're not a member of CPI, I know you are, Gabby, but if you weren't, become a member. We've got plenty to do. Another rumble rant, or another buy me a coffee from David Fox. Do you think the recent Canadian Prime Minister Mark Carney's visit to Australia is a mission to try and finance monopoly capital? I don't know about it. I haven't followed that. I know Trump is headed to China, which how in the world is Trump headed to China? At the end of March, Trump is going to be in China for a few days. How does that work? Right? When China is like on the other side, and I don't understand how that works, but Trump is headed to China. And, I don't know. I don't know about Mark Carney and his trip to Canada. I just don't know about it. But that's a good question, David. I don't follow Canadian and Australian politics enough to give you analysis of that. I do apologize. But I have no idea what's going on there. Honestly, I just don't know. I wish I could give you an answer, but I cannot. All right. So now Hempcar has sent his questions. Hempcar says, he linked an article. You can look at it in the chat. A brief history of Israeli theft and trafficking of Palestinian organs. Woo! Man, thank you for sharing that. Talk about evil. Did you see Kim Iverson covered declassified artichoke CIA documents talking about drugging people using soda, cigarettes, or vaccines? Page 2. Dick Gregory said they put manganese malt in malt beverage. Very interesting. No, I did not see that. Thank you for sharing that. Bill O'Reilly once said Nelson Mandela is a communist but a good man. Well, that's good. That's good. I remember David Duke. Every time they brought David Duke, the white supremacist, on TV, They would introduce him as former Ku Klux Klansman David Duke, and he'd be like, oh, but Nelson Mandela, you never call him a former communist. Look at this, Nelson Mandela. And he'd have Nelson Mandela next to a hammer and sickle. Look at this, Nelson Mandela is a communist. It was kind of funny. And, look, I'm not in favor of cancel culture, but David Duke, his views haven't changed, right? That's the thing. He's not in the Klan anymore. Right. And he claims to have, but he's still a white nationalist. Right. And he's just changed it. And like David Duke, he wasn't just in the Klan. He was like Mr. KKK. The KKK did like a whole like relaunch in the late 70s. And he was on every talk show as, I'm David Duke. I'm the KKK Grand Wizard. Check out the KKK. I'm the new young sexy face of the KKK. There's this movie that came out a few years ago called Black Klansman. It was by Spike Lee. I watched it. It was interesting to me because it's very clear that when David Duke was running the KKK was some kind of counter gang. It was some kind of intelligence operation. The ruling class were fighting among themselves. The late 70s, I have like a timeline of 1978 to 1981, there was a big fight within the ruling class, and the relaunch of the KKK in 1978, 79 was very much related to that. There was a fight in the ruling class, and he was going around building the KKK as kind of a secret society that did, street fighting and fought communists and stuff like that. The problem with the Spike Lee movie, first of all, it's not accurate. There's a book. It actually did happen. There was a black guy who did infiltrate the Klan, in Colorado. That happened, but the movie has nothing to do with what actually happened. The other thing is the movie makes it sound like the point is the Klan was some kind of intelligence operation. The film makes it sound like, well, the government is good, the police are good, the intelligence agencies are good, but the evil Klan was infiltrating them. No, David Duke's father was a CIA officer who was involved in airdropping leaflets all over Southeast Asia and ran CIA operations it's called Air America, which was the CIA's, airline that was like dropping propaganda. David Duke comes out of the intelligence world, right? He was somebody in the intelligence world who became a racist as a teenager, and the intelligence agencies like used him to like build up the KKK as some kind of intelligence thing. And there's actually a Frontline documentary that used to be on YouTube, and I can't find it anymore. They took it down. They talked about like some of the stuff that the KKK did when David Duke was running it was like blatantly, they were like doing volunteer work for the FBI. Like one thing that they did was they made comic books about killing white people that had like black people killing white people and advocated black revolution. And they distributed them across black neighborhoods with phone numbers in them, like call this number to get involved. And they were trying to collect the names of radical black people and give them to the FBI. Right. And they had a whole wing of the Ku Klux Klan that was called their counterintelligence division that just went around trying to collect the names of black activists. Now, that's not the work that some genuine, we're just genuine racists. That's intelligence work, right? That's FBI stuff. And David Duke was always doing stuff like that. The other thing that's weird is the reason David Duke quit the Ku Klux Klan is not because he says, I found God, I had a religious conversion. No, he didn't, because he's still a white nationalist. The reason he quit the Klan is that they leaked an audio tape of him making fun of the members. They caught him on audio tape making fun of all the members and saying that they were all stupid and that they were just in it for the money. And they leaked a tape, and the Klan members all like kicked him out basically after they leaked a tape of him making fun of all the members. And something was going on there, right? And the Greensboro massacre happened around the same time, where the KKK murdered 5 communists in Greensboro, North Carolina. November of 1979, you had the Greensboro massacre. David Duke and the Klan were doing some kind of FBI intelligence something, and then they leaked a tape of David Duke, and you can look at, it's a whole rabbit hole you can go down. But one of the weird things also, and I'll just throw this out there, and I don't know what to make of this, and I don't know. I'm not saying this. David Duke has always, from the moment he relaunched the Klan, been pro-Iran, right? And that doesn't make any sense because he's very anti-communist. He's very pro-imperialist. He loved apartheid in South Africa and all of that. But when he was running the Klan, they were supporting the Islamic Republic of Iran and supporting Iran. And that was very, very weird. I mean, there was the big thing where they had the Holocaust conference with Ahmadinejad, where David Duke went to Iran, and they publicized that over here. Look, Iran wants to kill all the Jews. They said the Holocaust didn't happen. There's something odd about David Duke's relationship with Iran. I think it's very, very odd. Another thing is that when they imprisoned David Duke in the United States, it was probably related to that, I will say, because it was after 9/11. There were a number of people in America who got prosecuted after 9/11 for bullshit. And they used the atmosphere of 9/11. One of them was the Holy Land 5. The Holy Land Foundation is the Council of American Islamic Relations of Texas, had a nonprofit that fed Palestinian children. And the FBI claimed that by feeding Palestinian children, it was funneling money to Hamas. They could not prove anything. They could not prove that anyone in Hamas had ever gotten anything, but just the fact that they were running like free food for Palestinian children in Texas, in this anti-Islamic atmosphere. They jailed like some very, very wealthy Muslims, in Texas for allegedly fundraising for Hamas. And they never could prove they actually gave anything to Hamas. It was a completely bullshit case. The Holy Land 5, they were called. That happened right after 9/11. David Duke, they got him for mail fraud. Like it was somehow like the mail out that he was sending was fraudulent or something. They got him for mail fraud. And it was some bullshit. I think it was related to the fact that he goes to Iran frequently, that he's viewed as pro-Iran, right? This is a former member of Congress. This is a guy who almost became the governor of Louisiana. So if you want to read something while we're talking about David Duke, this is the last thing I'll say about David Duke, is Sam Marcy, the founder of the Workers' World Party. He wrote a letter to the workers of Louisiana. When David Duke was running for governor of Louisiana, Sam Marcy, the leader of the Workers' World Party, he obviously didn't like David Duke. So he wrote this beautifully worded letter to the workers of Louisiana, urging them not to vote for David Duke. And he distributed it. It was distributed in bulk all over Louisiana from the leader of a communist group. And you read it. And I really urge people to read it. I really want people to read this letter, because anyone in Workers' World Party or PSL who talked this way nowadays would be expelled. He doesn't say to the workers of Louisiana who are going to vote for David Duke, he doesn't say, you're a big evil person, you're a racist. No, he actually talks about why they might support David Duke, and he makes arguments about it. He talks about affirmative action, how affirmative action shouldn't hurt white workers, right? How affirmative action should be done in a way that it benefits the most oppressed, but it doesn't hurt white workers. It's a really great piece, and I would urge you to go read it, because it used to be you could be a populist and be on the left. You're not allowed now, right? You're not allowed. Anyone who would vote for David Duke is just a pure evil person. We should never try to convince them otherwise. And it's not just David Duke, but Trump or any Republican, right? This is not a cancel culture letter. You read this. If the Workers' World Party still talked this way, I could probably still be a member, but they don't talk this way. And anyone who talked the way that Sam Marcy talked in 1991, they would drive out of the organization. So anyway, I just wanted to mention that while we're talking about that. But anyway, Hempcar asked some other questions. Right? Hempcar, what else did he ask? About Bill O'Reilly. He said, what do you mean it's not about human rights? Well, that's the notion. This war in Iran is supposedly about, it's about those poor Iranians are just oppressed by this evil government. And the USA just wants to spread freedom. Right. Come on. Give me a break. Give me a break. You know how many authoritarian regimes the USA has backed around the world? And I mean, do you think blowing up a country and killing people there, is that going to bring stability and peace to the country? Did the people of Afghanistan, now they're all just having freedom now that they've been occupied for 20 years by the United States? And look at Syria, look at Libya, all these countries. These people are just oppressed by dictators. And so the USA goes in and it rides in on a white horse, and now they all have freedom, right? Yeah. So anyway, I think I have made my point. But listen, you all are great. I'll be back tomorrow night. Saturday night is a really, really big night on this channel. It's a really, really big night on this channel. So I'll be back. And keep your eye out for the full video of the Al-Quds Day rally that happened today. I'll have a full video of it up soon. Tomorrow I'm going to go to an event tomorrow. Anyway, I'll tell you all about it later. But we got our CPI weekly meeting, and thank you, David. David says it's been a great show. And if David approves, I agree. If David approves, I'll accept that. David says it's a great show. I'll take it. You're very welcome, David. All right. Thanks, everybody. Have a good night. Have a good night. New upsurge in the struggle against U.S. imperialism is now emerging throughout the world. Ever since World War II, U.S. imperialism and its followers have been continuously launching wars of aggression. But the people of various countries have been continuously waging revolutionary wars to defeat their aggression. And while the danger of a new world war still exists, and the people of all countries must get prepared, revolution is the main trend in the world today.